Good evening and welcome to the maiden edition of Fact Sheet. Yes, Fact Sheet. Facts, they say, are sacred, but comments are free. And so this evening we will seek to differentiate the comments from the facts. And so whilst we try to discuss the facts on the show this evening, I'll then treat you to take your sheets as you follow us on this 1 hour long journey as we interrogate the issues of national interest, try to decipher the chaff from the core subjects that we need to always focus our attention on. I know you've been yearning for news that is unbiased, very healthy, that is comprehensive, that encompasses all views, contrasting, diverse, and this news is what Fact Sheet is all about. This evening, we are going to deal with these issues that in the long run would help propel our nation Ghana when it comes to nation building. My name is Eshun, and we welcome you to the show this evening. My guests are with me, and in a bit, we will introduce you to the topic for discussion this evening. But even as you prepare yourself to journey along with us tonight on Fact Sheet, just stay with us as we take a short breather. Welcome back from that short commercial break. You're live on eTVGhana and also live on the first edition of Fact Sheet. Tonight we are discussing a very important subject which concerns you, it concerns me, it concerns the whole wide world, because it's become a matter that is bedeviling everybody. On your phones, research has shown that we spend not less than 7 hours on our phones, not less than 7 hours on our tablets, on our computers, researching for news items on these platforms. In your car, when you're going to the office, you're listening to the news. In your office, you're monitoring the news. But what kind of content do you digest when you're monitoring the news? Is it the news which has been fact-checked, or is the news which is fake? By the way, we're talking about fake news tonight on Fact Sheet, and what constitutes that fake news which we always talk about. And so tonight, we are discussing what you have been digesting for the past few months. From the beginning of the year, you go to your social media, you go to your Facebook, your WhatsApp, you go to your regular print house to go and buy your dailies. You're monitoring the radio, you're monitoring the TV. What you consume, is it necessarily always the fact? Is it necessarily always factual? That's what we are talking about this evening on Fact Sheet tonight on eTVGhana. As earlier said, my name is Eshun, and my guest to help me do justice to the issue, Mr. Kweku Kobe Asante. He is the Programs Officer for the Media Foundation for West Africa and Team Leader for Fact Check Ghana. We all know when it comes to leading the charge, when it comes to fake news in this country, the Media Foundation for West Africa has been one of the institutions which has led the charge. Also here with me is Mr. Ellie Daniel Wilson. He's the Head Digital Media and Innovation, GMA, and tonight he will help us to understand and appreciate what goes into the content which is produced by online tabloids, by several radio stations that are operating online, by several TV stations that are operating on Facebook, YouTube, and all. How do they churn out these content which we classify as fake news? It would not be left to them alone to discuss the issues. We'd have Mr. Boadu Ayabuaf, who is the chairman of the National Media Commission. They are responsible to ensure our freedom. They are responsible to ensure that the content we churn out as media practitioners is fact-based. Also, we'll have the GGA president, Dr. Afiomoni, also join us in the course of our deliberations this evening on the show. And so tonight, we welcome you as we discuss what fake news is and what misinformation is. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so I will start with you, Mr. Asante, because I know that the Media Foundation for West Africa, you have taken it upon yourselves to fact check every information, especially going into the election 2020, what the politicians put out there and what you believe is not accurate information which they put out there. And so in that respect, when you go out there prospecting for what is really true and real, what is fake news?
Well, thank you, Sami, and thanks for having me on the show. Well, for us in the fact-checking work, we are very careful on how we use the term fake news. We understand that fake news is prone to be used as a weapon by people against the mainstream media, especially people who don't side with content from the mainstream media or content that does not support their agenda. It is known that somewhere in later 2016, a Google trend analysis showed that it was around that time that there was so much search for the term fake news. And it's not only fake news, but also fake media, because the then presidential candidate, one of the presidential candidates, now the president of the United States, Trump, was fond of using the term fake news, fake media, often against the mainstream media who were churning out stories or publishing stories that were not in favor of his agenda. And over time, we've realized that the term fake news has been sort of a political tool against the media, the mainstream media. So often what we want to refer to that term, that information disorder term, is either misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation, because we think that fake news, as we want to have it, is quite broad. And to bank everything in as one word can be a bit misleading. So misinformation explains, to a large extent, somebody sharing information without knowing that the information they are sharing is false. So I can receive an information from somebody I trust, I also forward it. In that process, I am misinforming. Okay, so what I have done is a misinformation, and we should call it as it is. Then there's disinformation. Disinformation also is sharing false information, knowing that the information I am sharing is false, but of course with the intent and purposes to mislead or to cause harm. And then there's the extreme form of what we call malinformation, where the information is based on reality, it's true, but somebody is sharing the information with also the intent of causing harm to an individual, a group of people, or an organization. Take, for instance, somebody trying to do revenge porn, for instance, all right? Or trying to show, as you're on set right now, somebody who's trying to blow your cover or let people know where you stay and cause harm to you. He may stand somewhere and take your picture and say, this is Sami Eshun, he stays at Agbogboloshe, at this junction, at this junction, at this junction. That information is real, it's true. But he's sharing that information and causing for people to say, go and look for him and beat him. Go and look for him and harm him. He's doing things as a journalist that is against our mission, that's against our agenda. So we think that the field of misinformation is quite complex, and so we should understand and call them as it is. If it's a misinformation, we should call it information. If it's disinformation, we should call it that. If it's malinformation, we should call it that.
All right. Now, just before we go on, you know, the proliferation of media houses in the country, TV, radio, and even the print media, then we ask ourselves, how does the GJ itself also see as an association this whole conversation about, you know, fake news? As Asante has broken it down for us, it says that there's misinformation, there's malinformation, and there is disinformation. We have been fortunate to be joined on the line by Dr. Moni, who is the president of the Ghana Journalists Association, to pick his thoughts on this conversation we are having about fake news. Mr. Moni, good morning. Good evening.
Good evening.
It's good to have you on the show this evening. But we are talking about fake news. And as the president of the GJA, what's your take on the issue of fake news in the country?
Fake news is real. It poses a serious threat to media development. And the tendency is that people inclined to swallow hook, line, and sinker whatever comes out of the media space. Because when I do believe that anything which is broadcast, anything which is published, is a gospel truth, and as professionals, our is to ensure that we don't feed the media with anything false. We need to check, cross-check, and there are processes, the mechanism to check fake news. This technology has made it simple, so we need to subject any information we receive. And as journalists, we should also bear in mind that we are trained to doubt, and the best of sources can let you down. So once you have this on the back of your mind, you're inclined to check and cross-check information, any information you see. And again, technology has made it easy to indulge in technological trickery. Things can be manipulated, voices can be manipulated, images can be manipulated, and if you're not careful, you fall easy prey to such manipulations. So it calls for dexterity in technology and also in news, and the ability to anticipate errors, mistakes, deliberate, not deliberate, intentional, not intentional. So it's a wake-up call to all of us, and it's straight that in traditional media, professional journalists sometimes are misled by fake news. There was one classic instance where traditional media really broadcast fake news about cabinet reshuffle during Mahama's time, and there was no reshuffle. And if the journalists are taking the trouble to cross-check with such as the Flag Staff House, such a blunder, momentous blunder would not have been committed.
But is there an abundance of, the issue of fake news when it comes to, the Ghanaian landscape in terms of the practice of our profession, journalism? Is there?
It's a great phenomenon, and we don't see much in the traditional media. As for socially determined content like social media, yes, it's rife. But in the traditional media, it's not much. But we also need to bear in mind that social media provide text and angles, tips, text and angles for traditional media. And once something hits the social media, you should be as quick as possible to cross-check. And if you're not sure about the authenticity of any story, you have no right putting it into the public domain. The best place is to dustbin the story.
Now, what's promoting, the existence of fake news and the fact that it's become that rife? You've cited instances where traditional media that's supposed to do a lot of cross-checking before it puts content out there does not. What's promoting this?
One causal factor of the spread of fake news is the competition. And the competition is becoming keener and keener, to the extent that the media space, both traditional and social, can be described as a competitive jungle. So in such a jungle, only the fittest survives. So in order to, in the rush to scoop or scoop others, the rush to be the first with the news, to attack eyeballs and traffic on your website or portal, then you tend to rush to the news. But ethically, there's an ethical injunction which should always serve as a reminder that even though news or journalism rests on two main pillars, speed and accuracy, under no circumstance should we sacrifice accuracy on the altar of speed. So when put speed and accuracy on the same scale, accuracy should come before speed. And under no circumstance should speed take the place of accuracy.
Now, let's talk about punitive actions. Are there any punitive actions that can be taken against media houses that consistently churn out false information, considering that, for instance, His Excellency the President has been calling for the media to be circumspect in the reportage they make, especially going into the elections?
Even if we are no more shackled by obligations like laws like a newspaper licensing law, another law, the Minister of Information had all the power to determine who was qualified to practice journalism. They look at background, sometimes your family, and try not to give you a license to operate. Thank God for the 1990 Constitution, which has liberalized the media space. But the repeal of the newspaper licensing law, the repeal of the criminal and seditious laws does not obscure the fact that the media space is still littered with landmines and portals, landmines on which we should not fall, and portals into which we should not also fall. For instance, the law of causing fear and panic is still on our statute books, and the other laws which can be applied to harm journalists.
Right.
So, 3 years we are freer than to be yesteryears. But at the same time, there are some legal obstacles, there are legal landmines we have to be mindful of.
All right, but there's a general perception that we are where we are in terms of the problem of fake news as a result of the falling standards in journalism. Do you share that view?
Yes. It's a critical factor. Falling standards, cheap journalism. People wouldn't want to subject information they receive to tests, to accuracy tests, to all kinds of tests. And as I said, they want everything cheap and everything cooked and ready to be served. But just, we need to scrutinize. We should be scrupulous regarding the canons and principles which underpin our profession, and checking and cross-checking. And it's a key ethical provision which you check and cross-check. And as I said, it's best repeating. The best of success can let you down. Ours is a human institution, and like all human institutions, perfection is an impossible goal. So we all have imperfections, but our perfection, by virtue of what we do, the imperfection of a journalist has no excuse. And the doctors kill mistakenly, sometimes out of negligence, but they kill in fewer numbers as compared to the harm misinformation or fake news can cause. Can cite so many examples, but one piece of misinformation can inflict incalculable consequences on the whole society and even country. Yeah.
We are grateful you made time to join us this evening, Mr. Afiomoni.
Thank you for the opportunity.
That's President for the Ghana Journalists Association, Dr. Afiomoni, joining us this evening. Sorry, you'd have to pardon me. Most of the times I spend my day in the mornings on the Happy Morning Show, and so it keeps popping up. But let me come to you, Ellie. From the digital point of view, most of us spend almost our entire lives on our phones, either on Facebook, on WhatsApp, on Instagram, looking for content. Now, from your perspective, what do you consider as fake news, as digital people?
Thank you, Brother Sami. So I'm glad this conversation is being had, especially because with elections around the corner, we'll be expecting, or it is expected that a lot of this misinformation will be propagated for whatever reason, sometimes malicious, as Mr. Ansar said.
All right, but before you proceed, let me make the announcement that the conversation is live on Facebook as well. And so anybody who would like to join the conversation on eTVGhana can just simply go to Facebook, Instagram, and then look for eTVGhana. eTVGhana, that's for Facebook. And then so can you find us on Twitter as well with the handle eTV_Ghana, and you can follow the conversation and let your thoughts and your views be heard this evening on the show. And so I see a lot of people who have joined the conversation also sharing their views with us on the show. Yours can also come through in the form of a text message, and we'll gladly acknowledge receipt of your text message and then read it live on the show this evening. So follow the conversation and let your thoughts be heard by being engaging and interactive. So Ali, I'll come back to you. You're making a point before I made an announcement.
Right, so misinformation, as it's been popularized as fake news, and which became popular because of Donald Trump and his war against media in 2016. It's something that's always been around, but with the surge of digital media, with the popularization of digital media, it has become, social media especially, it has become an echo chamber for spreading of misinformation. And this is something I'm always happy to speak about, because I think the onus to fight this fake news is upon all of us. It is not something that we can hold one institution to say they should combat what misinformation is. And this conversation has led to, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they've all been charged with responsibilities of, fighting fake news. But the argument always is, can we hold them accountable for what happens on their platform? Because, I mean, that's how they have built the platform, to build a community. How people are using it is within the community guidelines. So they always take a stance, or they refuse to become the supreme authority of truth. They refuse to become the platform that would fact check every single thing we post. But what they can do, and what they have done, even though there's more room even though there's more to do, is to flag and make it difficult for people to propagate fake news. And for Facebook, for instance, and I'll use COVID as an example. Before, when the pandemic broke out, I mean, everybody was passing information around, not because they intended to pass fake information around. We care about what's happening, and people want to share what they deemed as relevant information to their brother, to their sister, to their friend. And honestly, half of that was fake news. It wasn't true. It wasn't verified information. But the intent was good. However, nobody took the pain to question the source of the information until World Health Organization came out and started putting out, verifiable information. That was when the realization that what we've been passing around as one ways to combat COVID, how the virus spreads, how long it stays on surfaces, became clearer to a lot of us. But before, a lot of the information that was passed around in WhatsApp, on Facebook, on Twitter, weren't true. So platforms like Facebook, what they did was to create a new tab that would say, this is a verifiable source for learning about COVID. If you made any post on Instagram, if anybody's listening, they've been on Instagram, they would realize that if you make any post on Instagram since the pandemic, it is marked, there is a link that is put underneath your post. That is the platform saying, whatever you're reading here is okay, but if you want to learn authentic truth about COVID, click this link. So that is their little way of combating misinformation on their platform. But we cannot say they should be the supreme authority or the arbiter of truth as we would like to do, because, I mean, like I gave the example that the propagation is amongst us. They're not even done by bots for us to say there's a technical system that is propagating that. There is that, but most of the time it is from our caring grandmothers, our caring mothers who want to pass information around, and unfortunately, they also add to passing around misinformation.
We'll take a short breather. When we come back, we will try to understand the pointers that these professionals look at when they are talking about misinformation, disinformation, and then malinformation. Now, he's talking about COVID and the fact that we're all sharing content which we believed might help people survive. Right. We're sharing content about neem tree and the rest of them, and we're trying to help ourselves, but we're sharing information innocently. That was not going to help anybody. And so when we come back from this short break, we'll delve deeper into the pointers as to what you should look out for when it comes to determining what may be fake and what is not fake. You're welcome back. This is Fact Sheet live on eTVGhana. You can join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle is eTVGhana for Facebook and eTV_Ghana for Twitter. I would like to hear your thoughts on the conversation we're having, which is a very important one, especially going into the elections where you're going to sit in your home and expect results to be pushed to your WhatsApp platform, expect details to come through your WhatsApp group, which you're going to consume, thinking it is good content, which may end up being fake news. So, Ali, before we went for the break, you were talking about, what you look out for in terms of what constitutes fake news. You're talking about the steps that are being taken by the platforms themselves. Right. But what I want to understand is, so somebody registers a website. It's a news website. It's targeted at, let's say, sports, or maybe entertainment, maybe politics. Now, how does one determine whether this website is a fake news, website, whether this website has got what it takes to be classified as a credible platform? Exactly the point being that we have seen so-called credible platforms who have churned out information which has landed them in court, and they have lost cases, print media, which have published stories that they have been taken to court, and they have to publish, rejoinders, not rejoinders per se, apologies to the individuals affected. So from that aspect, YouTube TVs are many now, Facebook TVs are many now. How do we differentiate?
Thank you, Sami. At the expense of sounding like a doommonger, I would want to take a trip down what we call deepfakes. Deepfakes, thankfully in Africa, we do not see a lot of that. But what deepfake can do is the technology, there's a technology
Let
that...
me pause you for a second.
Right.
And then let me go to the phone lines and speak to Mr. Yaobodu Ayeboafo, who is the chairman of the National Media Commission, and pick his thoughts on the matter of fake news. They are responsible for the content, the protection of we, the journalists, you know, and also the content that we put out there. So much so that those who consume the content we are producing out there must also get the information that's required. Mr. Ayeboafo, we are happy to have you this evening on Fact Sheet.
Thank you.
His Excellency the President has been calling for a clampdown on fake news in the country. As National Media Commission, where are we falling short in terms of the fight against fake news?
Well, you know, when you use clamp down, sometimes those words have meaning. I mean, a feeling that people should be responsible. It's not a clamp down. A clamp down is where there's a deliberate attempt to stop that kind of thing. See, what is important for us is this, that we have an obligation. And as media people, we say that we inform the people and we take responsibility. It therefore means that whatever information that we put out, we must ensure that those information are factual, because people are going to make judgment and decisions based on the information that we are providing them. Such that if we provide them with false information, and based on that false information, they take any action that at the end of the day is not in the interest of anybody, it means that we will have been responsible for that kind of misconduct. And that is why it is imperative that we cross-check and check and check and check before we put out any information. Sending out false information is not in the interest even of the professional person who is sending out the information. It is not good for the integrity of the media house for which that person works, and it has negative consequences on the society within which that medium is operating.
Now, the point you made about, you know, cross-checking the fact, it may be easily applicable to the traditional media, but how about the advent of social media where a lot of content is shared now? How do we also deal with that?
Well, you know, there are two layers. The first one is at the social media level, where technically it is not mass, because some individual will generate the information. They will send it to a few other people, and then these other people will be sending it, so giving it a multiplication effect. Now, the other one is where traditional media will pick on social media content. And that, well, I mean, we are more interested. We can deal with the people at the individual level, but where traditional media like eTV picks on information on social media and rebroadcast it, that is where we are very much concerned. So the first step is that we have an issue statement appealing to traditional media never to use social media content unless they have cross-checked, verified, and established that the information that are being carried are authentic and factual. So that if, traditional media will not rush to publish anything they see on social media, but cross-check the information to establish whether there's any factual basis or not, I think that we can reduce the impact of social media at that level. Then at the level of social media, where individuals are sending out this information to other people, our appeal is to everybody that anyone who wants to send out information to any person, for instance, you are my friend, now you have heard something and you want to send it to me, ensure that the information that you are sending to me is a credible information. Because the information that you send to me can incite a certain response from me. And if I am misguided in undertaking anything that is consequential to the false information that you might have sent to me, then you will not have been of help to me. So we need to fight, the menace of social media from these two fronts. From the front of traditional media, not rebroadcasting social media information for the sake of it, and appealing to individuals who have following in the area of social media, that they must be sure that the information that they are putting out is accurate before they do that.
I would have wished we would operate with the tangent where you are, but I am looking at information, 2019 information, which has to do with the number of people who patronize social media and online platforms, the number of people worldwide who patronize TV and radio, and those who patronize newspaper and magazines. Almost about 50% of people worldwide are people who listen and take their news from the newspapers and magazines.
Okay.
Same 52, around 52, have been doing TV and radio. And a large number of about 69% have been doing online and online platforms. And so you see that the majority of the people are taking their content from the ones who don't necessarily cross-check their facts.
No, listen, when you go online, they are registered. There are some online operators that are registered. And so they are regulated as much as the traditional media. It is those ones that are not registered. The ones that exist today put out some information, and when you want to check, they don't exist anymore. That are very difficult. But in the analysis that you are doing, part of why the internet spread is big is also the fact that some of that same information gets reproduced on the traditional media. And so the impact then becomes multiplied. Because, you see, you are assuming that you are dealing with social media and you are sending me information. I am receiving it. And so it doesn't have that impact like the traditional media where there's simultaneous distance that whoever is within the catchment area of that information might have gotten it. And so I get it. And then I send it to 10 other people. Those 10 other people send it to 10 other people. And therefore it is spreading. We cannot do away, we can't. The technology is such that anybody who thinks that he can censor people is making a mistake. So we cannot censor social media. And in those countries who have attempted to do that, for instance, there's going to be elections in Tanzania. And the information is coming is that virtually they are blocking, the social media environment, and therefore WhatsApp and other things are not accessible. But for how long can you police the airwaves like that? So once we think that it is important that we allow people to express themselves in whatever means that they use, it is also critical for people to take responsibility for whatever information that they put out, so that at the end of the day, they contribute towards enlightenment rather than the destruction of society.
Mr. Iwafo, we are grateful you made time to speak to us this evening on Fact Sheet.
Thank you very much, and I hope that we will not be reproducing social media content just because it is titillating, it is exciting, or whatever. But that at least anytime that we're putting out any kind of information, we are going to establish the veracity and accuracy of that information before we do that, so that we don't become a disservice to society.
We are grateful once again for joining us. Yabodu Ayabwafo is the chairman of the National Media Commission. So earlier, I come back to you about the point you're making. Right. He was making the point about some websites that can be registered today. Tomorrow, you won't find them. Some websites that are registered, and yet when you search for information about them, it's difficult to find them. So give us a little bit of understanding what goes on in the digital world in terms of people having their own TV channels on Facebook and YouTube, and how we can look out for the pointers to guide us.
Thank you. So I was speaking about the world of deepfakes. I just want to give it a bit of background, and then we can be more circumspect in consuming that type of content. Now, in the world of deepfakes, like I said, it's not, thankfully, it is not popular here in outside of the world, but we live in a world where there is technology to reproduce your voice, to say things you haven't said. There is technology to even called CGI, where you can actually model somebody to look like something in a video, and it is very believable. There's technology to do that. Now, that is a technology that can be weaponized to use to drive false information. People do that elsewhere in the world to drive propaganda, to drive agendas, and it goes viral on social media. I mean, by the time you even get the chance to even verify whether it's true or not, 5 million people have seen it already, and its impact maybe has died before it's even pulled down. So that is the world we live in. So as media consumers, which is everybody in today's world, it is upon us to be very, very careful and circumspect in the source, considering the source that we consume our media. When it comes to websites and credibility, it's an issue of longevity. Who has been around long enough? Who has had a track record of giving us true information? That is the first step to filter out what is credible information and what is not. The new ones, there are a lot of, it's easy to get a website today. It's easy to put out content. So it is not advisable to quickly believe anything you read online. But if you are consuming content from credible media houses that have been around, that have the track record, over the years have shown over and over again, have covered elections accurately, have passed on information accurately, they have established the reputation of being credible. It is more advisable to consume content from these media houses.
But it takes a day for me to also begin the process of establishing my credibility. And so if you're talking about longevity,
yes,
then if I started a month ago, and so my stories begin to come out, and the person is looking for, the number of years I've been in the system, would that not be, biased?
No. So it's a world of news and a world of content that you have to consume. Consuming from one site, you are not limited to consume from one source or one website. So as consumers of media, this is my recommendation advice. Make sure where you're consuming has the credibility and track record. If it's sensitive information, if it's entertainment, of course, you can always consume it from elsewhere. But if it's information that is sensitive, that can influence decision, it is your responsibility to make sure you're consuming the information that is more verifiable. So if you're consuming the content, also make sure the source of that content, the source of that information is something that can be traced. Sometimes if you're reporting on coronavirus or politics or sports, you can always go back to the football. If it's football, for instance, you can always trace it back to the original website of the football club. And then I would also like to speak about how, to check whether a website is, legitimate or not. There are simple things to look out for. Websites that have country extensions, like a .com.gh, or a .com.ng Nigeria, or .co.za like South Africa. It takes a lot more process to register a domain like that. They'll require a document from you. So if you're consuming content from that website, at least you have the belief that there's due diligence that has been done by the body that governs that domain, as opposed to a simple .com that I can literally buy tonight and be live tomorrow morning. There are also ways to check whether the website has a security level, installed in it. It's called an SSL. It's a simple thing to ignore, but it's also something to also check to ensure the website is a credible website, which is the beginning of the website. If it has an HTTPS, the S there is a sign that it has a security layer installed in there. It's better to consume content from these websites than just any other website you find online.
But coming to you, from the way the two of you are speaking, it looks like the responsibility of ascertaining the veracity of content we consume is now on us, the consumers of the information. Because the point he's making, for instance, if you send me a link about how Eshun has started a new show called Fact Sheet, it is for me to now, after you sent me the link, yes, I may read it, but I would have to go to maybe several of the so-called credible ones to check if that story is there. Or
yes.
So then there's a higher responsibility then on us as consumers of content.
Exactly so, and I think that for consuming information or accessing information, I think we've always talked about media information literacy, as in teaching people on how to consume information, how to create information, and how to verify. I think that the practice of verification is something that has been lost on us for a period of time, and I think that sometimes to even looking at our tradition and culture to a large extent, there's that verification is not something that we really hold in high esteem. To start with, there's this culture of yes say, I care, you know, and that's how information spreads.
Yeah.
You know, somebody picks it up and say, oh, have you heard that there's this say, oh, they are saying that this is what is happening. They are saying that it is the same practice that we run it in parallels on how we work on WhatsApp, for instance. I see the information, I forward. I see the information, I forward. Not for once will anybody sit back and say, where is the source of information coming from? You have the responsibility on your own to check and verify and say, as I forward this to other people who I may care for, who I may not care for, it is my responsibility to ensure that this is true information. Again, I talk about our culture and tradition in the sense that we ascribe a certain level of trust to information, especially coming from people of authority and elder people, stemming from the culture of ageism in Ghana, for instance. So that if somebody who is older is saying something, you know, you don't have the right to go back and cross-check. In fact, you risk offending their sensibilities. If an elderly should know that what he told you, you are passing behind to cross-check. And that is something that is looming large even on the mainstream media. So we like he said. It is coming from, oh, but of course he's a minister. Of course he's the rep of government. Of course this person is that person. And if he's saying this, then perhaps it is true. But we as mainstream media, as journalists, have the responsibility to verify. The difference between information and news is that one has been verified and cross-checked again and again. And that's why we say it is news. And so when you put it out there, you are supposed to trust it.
All right. Let's go for a very short breather. When we come back, we have 10 more minutes. This is a very broad conversation, and we are trying to exhaust the first batch. And when we come back, we have 5 minutes. We'll take your comments that you've sent to us on our Facebook platform, Twitter as well. Read them before we take final comments from our guests this evening before we end Fact Sheet tonight. And you've been watching Fact Sheet live on eTVGhana. If it's not a fact, we don't discuss it. And so this evening, the maiden edition, we are talking about what we are going to be talking about in the next few weeks ahead of us. The facts, the data, the content that we'll be discussing. If it's fake, how do you determine it? So let me come to you, Mini Asante. And, you know, I was going to say something in the Tree language, but I had to pause for a second because you made reference to and challenge your opinion.
That's right.
Now, I am linking it to the period we are in. It's a political season.
That's right.
The politicians are going to churn out a lot of content on their campaign rally grounds. They're going to churn out content. Now, how do we, as recipients, know this minister who's an elderly person, or your opinion, you know, how do we know what he's saying is not true or it is true?
Well, so for us at factcheckghana.com, under the Media Foundation for West Africa, we work with a simple principle. We say the devil is in the detail, DID. The point is that you can never tell by just listening to the person unless you have a prior information to that matter. So that if you know that this event happened in 2013 and this was what happened, then you have a political leader, you know, somebody aspiring to be a president or whoever, MP, saying the contrary, then on just head knowledge, you can tell. All right? But many of the information they share are information that you may not have in your head. And so we say, search for it. Verify. We say verification is a high virtue. Let's uphold it. So all we do is that the president has said this, or the vice president has said this, the opposition leader has said this. We go for the full speech. We take out the fact-checkable claims, claims that we can follow up to and say, even if we think that on the surface of it, this looks like it's true. Let's not play with it or give it a chance.
Yeah.
Let's go to it and see if indeed what he's saying is true. If it's true, well, we say the president has spoken the truth. This is true information. But it is false. We have to also put it out and say this is false information or this is misleading. And so how we tell that an information coming from a political leader or somebody who is aspiring to be in any position, my answer, always verify.
But normally these statements are made on the go. They would have made that statement, let's say, at Asylum Down. From there, they are moving to, let's say, Eshun. So they have said that Eshun is not a credible guy on a rally, at a rally grounds. They moved. Now, the person who went to consume that content at that place,
that's right,
that cross-checking may not be done. And so that content stays, that information stays with that individual. So how do we handle it when it's on the go?
So it is the reason that we are calling for a lot of media houses, for instance, to engage in verification exercise. Because essentially, these politicians, these heads, authorities, and all the people rely on the media to reach out to the masses. That's why at every event, they want to invite you. That's why at every event, they bring an invitation and say, come and cover the event for us. Okay? So if you go there and they say this live, and you know that the information is gone, some people have consumed it, at least there are teaming others who were not present at the event, that what you are going to reproduce or republish out there is what is going to inform them on the conversation that happened at that event. And so if you are verifying, if you are putting it to the test and say, the potential MP made this pronouncement at the event, we have looked at it, verified, and we think that this is not accurate. It is the reason my organization, Fact Check Ghana, my organization, Media Foundation for West Africa, is always on the go. We want to put the information out there. Whoever will see, let's continue to republish. Whoever would see, they get informed. And there have been instances where a political leader has repeated something over a number of platforms. We put out a report calling him out and say, this is false information, this is misleading. Right. And you'll be interested in it is interesting that at the next time when they have the opportunity, they don't repeat that anymore. Ali,
let me take final comments from you before we wrap up this evening.
Okay, so I just want to wrap up by saying, anybody else, anybody on the internet, anybody who consumes media, when you see positive content, engage with it. If you see content that is questionable, research it. And if you see content that you do hate, I advise that you ignore it totally, because at the end of the day, the responsibility to fight fake news, it's not going to be done by anybody else but ourselves. We need to question information more. We need to be more careful about the sources of our information. On digital, I'd like to say verified accounts give more credibility to the source than just any account on social media. And in the climate that Ghana operates in, traditional media has more trustworthiness than digital media. So it is best to, especially with elections around the corner, I advise everybody to tune into GMABC Happy eTV and consume election content, election news with our GMABC election camp and get credible news.
Thank you, gentlemen, for heeding the call for us to have a conversation about a very important subject like that of fake news in the system. On that note, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Kwaku Kobia Asante, for joining us. He is the Programs Officer for the Media Foundation for West Africa and Team Leader for the Fact Check Ghana. We'll thank Dr. Afio Moni, JJ President. We'll also thank you, Eli, for joining us. He is the Head, Digital Media and Innovation GMA, and Mr. Iyaobodu Ayabua for Chairman, National Media Commission. There are a few comments I'll read, but let me state that tomorrow, God willing, at 10 a.m., there will be a repeat broadcast of this show on eTVGhana. Tomorrow, God willing, at 10 a.m., there will be a repeat broadcast of this show on eTVGhana. A few comments I'll read before we check out of here. This one from Eunice Tony says, differentiating the comments from the facts. Thank you. And this one says, fact sheet from Bridget. Kwabena says, new show on air, but pregnant with heavy information. Go high, bro. This one from Nana Amakwansa. She says, Mr. Daniel Wilson is making some valid points. And so these are a few comments I can read out to you. There are several of them, but for want of time, we will not be able to go through all of them. My name is Samuel Eshun, and on behalf of my producers and technical crew, we'd like to thank you for being a part of tonight's edition of Fact Sheet on eTVGhana. We'll be back, God willing, next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Do make a date.